Welcome to the Macquarie Pier pathway. Port Authority would like to acknowledge the Awabakal and Worimi peoples, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We would also like to pay respect to the elders both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present. This audio tour has been developed to complement your looped walk along the Macquarie Pier pathway today. It will take you from prehistoric times to the current day, bringing to life significant aspects of this area's history. This includes its fiery volcanic inception, as well as its military and maritime significance. We begin our tour by returning to 1818, a few decades after the first fleet set foot in Australia.
On the afternoon of Tuesday, 4th of August 1818, an ambitious plan was born. Looking out to what was once Knobbys Waibagamba Island, the then Commandant of Newcastle, Captain James Wallace, proposed constructing a land bridge to link the headland to the mainland. In his company was Governor Lachlan Macquarie, who agreed it was important work and that construction should begin immediately. An excerpt from the Governor's Journal details the laying of the pier's foundation stone.
The stone being cut and ready with an inscription, it was laid accordingly with all due form in presence of the artificers and labourers to be employed in the construction of it. And Captain Wallace having proposed that it should bear my name, it was accordingly called after me Macquarie Pier, which the present year, 1818, was cut and inscribed on the foundation stone. After the foundation stone had been laid, the artificers and labourers were served with an allowance of spirits to drink success to the undertaking, which they did with 3 hearty cheers.
Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!
Shortly after, construction of Macquarie Pier commenced using convict labour and stone quarried from Flagstaff Hill, now known as Fort Scratchley. You stand at what appears to be the beginning of Macquarie Pier. However, the start is actually 200 metres to the west. The construction of Macquarie Pier continued until January 1823, when works were suspended until recommencing in 1835 with a new convict workforce. Stone was sourced then from Nobbys Waibagamba headland in order to complete the eastern end of the pier. It was finally completed in 1846, 28 years after commencement.
Did you know a location on Mars is named after Knobbys Head? It has also been updated by NASA to reflect its Aboriginal name, Waibagamba. This information has been sourced from The Life and Times of Macquarie Pier by Hunter Living Histories. You can read more on the construction of the pier on their website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. On your way to the next sign, you will shortly reach the corner of Horseshoe Beach, on which a major shanty town was constructed during the Great Depression. Guardian in difficult times. Did you know that by July 1930, there were approximately 170 unemployed men camped around Newcastle's beaches?
During the Great Depression of the 1930s, camps or shanty towns of unemployed people were established on some of Newcastle's beaches, including the beach beyond where you were looking. Australians who had lost their sources of income were evicted from their homes and arrived at these shanty towns with only the few possessions they could carry. With materials such as wood, corrugated iron and hessian sacks, they would construct a shack for shelter in an empty area. The state and Commonwealth governments established one of the main shantytown camps on Horseshoe Beach, located in present-day Nobbys Beach Reserve. In 1937, with an impending World War, the shantytown was removed to establish the Camp Shortland military camp and parade ground. Camp Shortland continued to operate in this location until 1972.
This information has been sourced from the Coal River Precinct Archaeological Assessment and the Australia's Past Present Image Archives. You can read more on the City of Newcastle website and view images of the shanty town on the Past Present website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. Newcastle Harbour History. Did you know that marine pilots have helped ships navigate safely through Newcastle Harbour for more than 220 years?
Newcastle Harbour was established in 1799 as the first commercial export port in Australia. Today, Newcastle Harbour remains the largest port on the east coast of Australia, with over 2,200 trade vessels visiting each year. The port includes 20 operational berths and has the capacity to handle more than 25 different cargoes. What has truly ensured the longevity of the port, however, is not its impressive facilities, but the tireless dedication of Port Authority of New South Wales's marine pilots. Marine pilotage is an ancient profession that has been essential to shipping since ancient Greece. Port Authority's marine pilots have a particularly difficult job at Newcastle Harbour due to the port channel's relatively shallow depth. When considering the giant dimensions of modern ships, which can contain up to 150,000 tonnes of cargo, marine pilots require significant skills, experience and local knowledge to navigate ships safely into and out of the harbour. At the Port of Newcastle, marine pilots fly offshore in helicopters or sail in pilot cutters to transfer onto vessels requiring their services. Once on board, the marine pilot consults the ship's crew before taking charge of the conduct of navigation. They then steer the ship safely into the port, while the master of the ship retains command of the vessel. Look around now to see if any helicopters are currently in operation near you.
This information has been sourced from the Port Authority of New South Wales website and the Newcastle Herald. You can read more on marine pilots on the Port Authority website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. The shelling of Newcastle. Did you know that coal from Newcastle provided fuel for the war effort?
In order to protect that supply chain, gun emplacements were installed at intervals along the length of the pier. This supplemented the battery at Fort Scratchley, defending the entrance to the Port of Newcastle. These defences were soon put to the test. On the 8th of June 1942, Japanese submarine I-21 opened fire on the city of Newcastle at 2:15 in the morning. Fort Scratchley returned fire on the submarine, which could be located only by the white flares of its fired shots. After 4 rounds from the Fort Scratchley guns, the submarine ceased firing. Some of the 21 to 24 projectiles fired by the submarine landed in the Newcastle East End, and many others in the industrial area of Mayfield West. The shelling caused minimal damage and no casualties, and the enemy submarine was never found. You can track the line of the projectiles on the designated sign near where you were standing. The attack woke locals, such as the Bradford family, who gathered in the living room as the shells whizzed above them. One of the eldest children remembers his mother saying,
I think our boys are fighting in the wrong direction.
She then left to play the piano in the lounge room to drown out the noise. Another boy, Peter Wilson, had been sleeping with his brother in their enclosed veranda bedroom and woke to watch the first shells from the window. Mere moments after his mother pulled him and his brother downstairs to the lounge room, a Japanese shell hit the house and destroyed the bedroom. This escape later earned Peter the title of luckiest boy in town in the Newcastle Morning Herald.
This information has been sourced from the Battle for Australia Association. You can read more on the shelling of Newcastle on their website. Protecting the port. Did you know that the movement of sand was integral to the development of Macquarie Pier?
Before the construction of Macquarie Pier, tidal action deposited a sandbar below the water surface in this location. Ships approaching from the south of Knobbys Head would sometimes try to take a shortcut into the mouth of the Hunter River by entering between the island and mainland. This means they tried to cut through the passage containing the pier on which you are now standing. If the ships did take this shortcut, they were very likely to be grounded on this sandbar. Macquarie Pier was therefore constructed to force ships to enter the river from the north of Nobbys headland. Further works inside the harbour itself altered the flow of the Hunter River to scour out a deeper channel, improving and reinforcing shipping lanes. By providing a safer approach to the harbour, Macquarie Pier helped a fledgling penal colony on the Hunter River to thrive and Newcastle to develop into the major port city it is today. The pier facilitated major shipping projects and secured trade in the Hunter region. Port Authority of New South Wales continues the tradition of helping the safe navigation of ships into and out of the Newcastle port. As a link between Port Authority's past and present maritime operations, Macquarie Pier is still used as an access route for the Newcastle Breakwater, as well as for the active signal station and lighthouse on Nobbys Head. If you look upwards ahead, you'll be able to see the top of the headland. This is the location of the lighthouse, which, having been constructed in 1857, is the earliest surviving example of a lighthouse in New South Wales.
This information has been sourced from the Newcastle Herald. You can read more on the movement of sand and Newcastle's working port on their website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. Remnants of a volcanic past. From here, you can appreciate what a unique geological structure Nobbys Head is. Can you guess what formed this strangely shaped rock formation to remain as an island emerging from the sea?
The geological material in Nobbys headland was likely formed when volcanoes off Port Stephens and around Armidale erupted, hurling tons of rock into the air and eventually landing around Newcastle. Although it's formed from the same material as the mainland, the headland wasn't eroded as quickly and remains as an outlier. The jagged rock face hints at what Newcastle would have looked like 300 million years ago during the late Permian period. The softer rock east of the dike in the cliff face has eroded more quickly, creating a sharp edge in the face of the cliff which can be seen behind the gun emplacement building. The strata of Nobbys headland highlight the layers of stone, shale and the seams of coal that gave rise to this precinct's name of Coal River.
Can you see the different rock layers on the visible cliff face?
The coal deposits, which had originally been great fir forests, provide clues that 250 million years ago, Newcastle would have experienced temperate conditions. The other intriguing geological element is the basalt dike that cuts into the side of the headland at this point. From where you were standing, an etched dike is shown in nearby hatching. The basalt was created by molten magma forcing its way upwards into a crack in the surrounding rocks thousands of years ago. The dike is visible on the ocean floor, and the etching in the path shows its alignment to where it is then visible up the side of the cliff face.
This information has been sourced from ABC Local. You can read more about the formation of Knobbys Wybergambai Head on the ABC Local website. Please note that this walking tour does not extend to the southern breakwater. When you are ready to head back, you can continue the tour back down the Macquarie Pier walkway. The next sign will be located 200 metres from this location, ahead on your left. Threats to Knobbys' rich biodiversity. Did you know that this area around you was once infested with one of Australia's most noxious weeds? With a pretty yellow flower, bitu bush does not look like a plant that can be so damaging to the local environment.
The first record of bitu bush in Australia was in 1908 in Stockton, just across the water from where you are now. Bitu bush invades local ecosystems, destroying local flora. The plants secrete chemicals from their roots and leaves which affect the natural chemistry of the soil, suppressing the growth and inhabitancy of native plants. This in turn also affects insects and native birds as the climate of dune environments change and are no longer suitable for certain species. Together with seed authorities and volunteer organisations, Port Authority of New South Wales continues to manage and reduce the spread of bitu bush throughout Australia. However, this area is also home to a rich diversity of flora and fauna. Newcastle Rock Platform, which extends from Nobbys Beach through to Newcastle Beach, provides important roosting spots for a rich diversity of birds.
Did you know that more than 15 species of birds have been sighted on the Newcastle Rock Platform?
Silver gulls and crested terns are some of the most abundant species frequenting these rock platforms. Look out across the water to see if there are any roosting at this very moment. Each year, the Newcastle coastline is also filled with thousands of humpback whales on their annual migration from Antarctica. These gentle mammoths can be viewed from June to November in the warmer waters, which provide opportunities for the whales to breed, give birth and prepare their young calves for colder climates down south.
This information has been sourced from the Natural Heritage Trust, Hunter Birds Observers Club report and the Newcastle Herald. You can read more on Newcastle's rich biodiversity on the City of Newcastle website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. Community use.
Newcastle Harbour has been the central hub of economic activity in the local community for over 2 centuries. Macquarie Pier remains as critical to Port Authority's present-day operations of Newcastle Harbour as it did upon following its initial construction in 1846. Alongside its rich maritime and trade opportunities, the community of Newcastle has also been using the pier and the beach for recreation. The site is a key location for charity fun runs and events and has become as much a part of the people as a part of the city. The pier has become a backdrop for victories and celebrations, but it has also been a backdrop for tragedy. Tributes to these events and people dot their way along the length of both Macquarie Pier and the southern breakwater. Some expressions are officially commissioned, but many are not. The informal, under cover of night tributes demonstrate an important part of the larrikin character of those particular Newcastle dwellers. One example is a series of precast concrete construction piles which have been used around the pier to define pathways. Looking like pencils with their hexagonal shafts and pointed tips, this precast pile has been painted in the red and black of a Stedler pencil, which at the time it occurred were the colours of the Shortland Devils Football Club. A tribute to the Shortland Devils was inscribed in the concrete next to where this pencil was previously located, which also commemorates local footy legend Robert "Bobby" Palmer, who was fatally stabbed in December 2020.
This information has been sourced from the Newcastle Herald. You can read more on local community events on their website. Knobbies Railway. Did you know under this path is an old railway line that ran to the top of Knobbys Head, all the way to the end of the breakwater?
Macquarie Pier, completed in 1846, suffered intense damage from the action of the surf. The stone quarried from below Fort Scratchley and the top of Knobbys headland was too soft to withstand the impact of the waves. As early as the 1860s, part of the structure was already washed away, and the newspapers reported that large gaps had opened up along the length of the pier. In order to repair and reinforce the pier, a harder stone was sought and discovered at Waterside, the location of the current Newcastle Pistol Club and Archery Range. Repair works commenced in 1866, and it was reported that blocks weighing 10 and 12 tonnes were tipped daily onto the base of the seawall. When you examine the pier now, try and imagine all these blocks which still support the sturdy surface on which you are standing today. Transporting these large blocks involved the railway. A branch line was extended from Newcastle Station all the way across to the Macquarie Pier and along its top surface. The railway tracks and sleepers still exist below the current paved surface.
Did you know that Nobbys Beach is an entirely artificial beach?
The construction of Macquarie Pier caused sand to build up in the south that eventually became the beach cherished by generations of Newcastle dwellers. The railway, which had been created to transport quarried stone from the mainland to the pier, was now being used to transport quarried sand from the pier back to the mainland. The sand pit was quarried between the late 1920s and approximately the 1950s. You are now standing where the sand siding exited the mainline and the etching in the surface tracks its location. Remnants of the sand siding can still be found in the sand dunes beyond.
This information has been sourced from the Coal River Precinct Archaeological Assessment. You can read more about the railway on the City of Newcastle website and view images of the railway on the Newcastle Herald website. There is no need to scan additional QR codes for the rest of the tour if you keep this video open on your device. You can also stop this recording at any time to align the tour with your location on the walk. The next sign will be the final stop of this walking tour. Along the break wall. In preserving this beautiful piece of history, Port Authority hopes to celebrate the pier's heritage and continue Newcastle's legacy as one of Australia's most significant maritime ports for generations to come. Now that you've completed the trip back and forth on the revitalised pathway, Spare a thought for those who used to live at the heritage Knobbies Cottages when the path was not so smooth.
Well, there was always something to do. We'd have bushfires, kids would light fires in the salt bush, or there'd be something, there was always something different to do. We'd always make up a game. And I used to go fishing with Dad on the riverside, whereas now there's nothing there, I've noticed. Well, there's no rocks there. It used to be called Stony Point. And along from there, on the riverside, there used to be this ledge. It's about that wide. And you used to take your fishing tackle down there, and the water used to lap right up over that. And that was at different tides, high tide usually. And we used to go down there, and Dad taught me how to bait a hook and gut a fish. And, I used to be good at it. Never worried me. I couldn't be bothered doing it now, but do you ever catch anything big enough to cook for dinner and eat? Yes, quite often, because it used to be pretty deep there.
Like, it was only a very small 3-bedroom house, but I still remember one particular Christmas. Actually, it's a pity, a friend who's staying with us tonight, he came up. We probably had, there was Ross, John, Cam. There was probably 4 or 5 of us, and there's only a very small 3-bedroom house. And I still remember, or a recollection, my sisters had some friends over one night and coming home late one night and being grabbed on the leg because there was a stretcher in the lounge room. And I thought it was, I thought it was one of the girls, and it was Mum. Mum had realised there just wasn't enough room, so she was on the camp stretcher, and so the house was always, it was a small house, but always a lot of life in the house. So yeah, and it was good fun. Like, and it was a great place. It was a great place to live in because. Well, you had the beach, there was always something going on. And every time a ship came out, I don't think I ever got bored standing on the headland watching a ship go by, so in, out or indifferently, so yeah. There's plenty of entertainment, like as you can imagine at that particular time. Like, we came at a time when a lot of things were changing in Newcastle down on the foreshore, like suddenly they were cleaning up the act there, like the shunting area right at the end was going, like there's a lot of re-beautification going on with the fact that like the bicentennial was coming, so yeah, there's always things to do, there's always something to do, and probably at stage lots of pubs as well. And the recollection I always have is it didn't matter where we went, you'd end up somewhere close to the shore, and there was always a light on to get you home. And funnily enough, I still have a recollection of one time I probably had a few too many drinks at the brewery and come home, and I remember hitchhiking from there, and I got a lift home up to Knobbys. It was a carload of girls, so it was a lot of fun for me, and they couldn't believe that someone lived up there. He said, yeah, no, I live up there. And then we all piled into the house, and like it was just Dad staggering out at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and what's going on? I said, oh, these girls didn't think I lived here. So it was really a unique spot. But it was quite interesting too. There was plenty of times where I jumped into a taxi and got taken to the wrong place, because at that stage there was a Knobbys the Lighthouse was a nightclub down near the family hotel, and many a time I'd be driven that way rather than home. But yeah, it was great because it was an easy location to find. And like, as I say, our parents lived here, and I was in Newcastle for a long time, and I only really knew Hunter Street and Derby Street because you didn't need to know anything else.
There were rainy days. There were days when the waves would be washing over the breakwater, and there were great concrete slabs along the breakwater, and when the waves would wash over, we'd have to run between each slab to make sure that we didn't get wet with the waves washing over, and we'd have to wait until each wave went across and then run to the next one. And then there were days as well when it was very, very windy and the sand used to blow across, and we'd have to wear raincoats because the sand was like cutting through you. It'd be like sandblasting, you'd call it these days. I know Dad used to come down and walk me home from school because the wind was so horrific that they were frightened that you'd get blown off the actual breakwater off the side of the breakwater into the riverside. There was just no protection there at all.
These clips have been sourced from the Newcastle Museum website. Thank you for joining us on our time travel adventure through the history of Macquarie Pier.